There's a Jew I know. His name is Rabbi Nissen Mangel. He shared with me once that he was 10 years old when he arrived in Auschwitz. He was 11 years old when Auschwitz was liberated. Probably the youngest or one of the youngest survivors of the Auschwitz-Birkenau death camp. He came face to face with Dr. Joseph Mengele, the angel of death, twice. Mengele considered doing experiments on him, and twice he got himself out. Reb Nissen Mangel, may he be well, very special Jew. His father was Reb Eliezer Mangel, and his father was killed on the day of liberation. He had his father with him. The day of liberation, his father was killed, and Reb Nissen went on the death march from Poland to Germany. An 11-year-old boy, he tells me, I was sick, I was hungry, I was despondent, I was emaciated, I had no energy. I had my father, and my father was now dead. And you know that the Germans, if you stopped walking, you stepped out of line, you sat down to rest, they shot you immediately. That's why most people did not survive the death march. He said, I didn't have any energy to continue this march. For a week straight, they did not give you any food. All they can eat is the muddy snow on the ground for 7 days. Walking and walking and walking. And Reb Nissen said to me, he said, at some point, I told myself, enough is enough, I can't bear this anymore. Let me just step out of line. I'll get a bullet in my brain, and it'll all be over. The alternative was just excruciating torture till they die anyway. And Reb Nissen said, and at that moment I had a vision. I was sitting Friday night in my home before the war, before the Holocaust, and my father is sitting around the table and telling us stories. And there was a story that he would often tell us about the Baal Shem Tov. The Baal Shem Tov had a chassid, a disciple, who once came to visit him from another city. His wife was pregnant, she would have to give birth, but they didn't think that it was time yet for the birth. He came to the Baal Shem Tov, and when he was at the Baal Shem Tov, he got a message that his wife is going into labor and he must go home immediately. The problem is, it was nighttime. He thought he would wait till the next day, but the Baal Shem Tov said, no, go home now, go home now. He said, Rebbe, but to go home during the night, I'm going through a forest. And this forest was notorious. There can be gangsters there, and thieves there, and thugs there, and I can lose all my money, lose my life. So he says, Rebbe, I'm afraid to go alone in the forest. And the Baal Shem Tov said these words, Ayid geht keinmal nicht allein. A Jew never ever walks alone anywhere. Hashem is always walking with him. Gay, you're not going alone. And the Jew went with a confidence, with a stamina, with a sense of security. And Reb Nissen says, an 11-year-old boy on the death march left Auschwitz. I had this flashback, this vision of my father sharing this story around the warm, cozy Shabbos table with the flames glowing. And it gave me such a dose of energy. Ayid geht keinmal nicht allein. I'm not walking on this death march alone. God is holding me. And I held on to this story. I held on to this statement of the Baal Shem Tov. I held on to this truth. I held on to Hashem. And here I am today.
TheYeshiva.net